Jake and I decided to do some investigation on our own after the reminder last night that the hunters and the rogues were still after us. After all, we were woods, and woods do not like to just stand around and wait for something to happen. Jake and I were taking actions into our own hands. That asshole was lucky that there were no hunters or rogues in the woods last night, Jake said, sitting comfortably in the passenger seat. Tell me about it, I muttered, clutching the steering wheel. I don't know what I would have done if he died. Jake simply sighed, staying quiet. This whole morning, he's been overprotective of me, casting deadly glares at Harrison. He complained more than I did about this whole situation. Everyone complained more than I did. Obviously, they weren't too happy with him at the moment. When I found out he made it home safe, I cried tears of relief. I was worried sick, and if he died, I would have hated myself for the rest of my life. I pulled into the small parking lot of the Big Calibre, at one of the 3 stores that sold guns in Lancetown. We investigated one of the other 2 gun stores prior to approaching this place. However, it was shot down the minute we saw how rusty their guns were and how bad business was running in the place. I looked at the small, rectangular shop in fear. Leave it to me to think of the worst-case scenarios every single time. I was scared that somehow these humans would find out what we were. It was risky walking into a place with guns. We could be dead any minute if they found out. When Jake and I entered the shop, the small bell on the door rang informing about our arrival. My stomach clenched when my eyes saw the various guns sitting on the shelves and hanging on the walls. Jake, who always stayed calm, snorted at a picture of a man next to the bear he shot, smiling proudly. My eyes widened when it rested on spears identical to the ones I saw the night of the warehouse incident. Jake, I whispered, gripping his forearm. Those are the ones the hunters used when my dad planned the attack on us. His eyes widened slightly before he smirked. Then I think we found the right place. How could you be so… Hello, a raspy voice greeted us. We turned around to face a skinny man dressed in faded jeans and a flannel shirt. His dark curly hair was pushed under a blue faded cap. He smiled, showing a set of yellowing teeth. According to his worn-out tag, his name is Robinson. Do you need any assistance? Yes, Jake said, looking around the place with confusion. I don't know much about guns, but we just moved in with our family. We're trying to get rid of dogs that we've sighted in our backyard. We have a little sister, and we're concerned about her safety. What are your suggestions? I tried to hide the smile on my face. Jake was good at acting as well as lying. I wouldn't be surprised if he made it into Hollywood with his charming good looks and his acting skills. Ah, Robinson muttered, smiling wider like he knew something we didn't. Dogs. That is a big problem here at Lancetown. Follow me. We followed him towards a set of rifles hanging behind the register. He went behind the counter, taking a gun off the rack and handing it to Jake. Jake took it cautiously, examining the gun. Does this look familiar? Jake asked through the mind-linked, fingering the black metal. No? You can actually smell the wolfsbane. This is not what we're looking for. It's just a regular rifle. So, why did your family decide to move to such a small town? Robinson asked curiously. Our father is a geologist. We move around a lot to small towns. We usually stay for 2 to 3 years and then we move again. Jake lied smoothly. How old are you, son? Robinson asked, scratching his wrinkled face. Are you aware that we can't sell guns to minors and you must present a valid gun license when purchasing a gun? I'm 19, sir, Jake smiled. He pulled out his wallet and showed his gun license to Robinson. This was the only thing that Jake didn't lie about. He actually possessed a gun license, but did not own any guns. So, tell me about these big dogs, Robinson suggested, leaning over the counter. Jake put down the gun and looked at him. Well, I don't know what steroids Lancetown feeds them, but they're huge. This one I saw was the size of a bear and it growled constantly. We locked up the house, scared that it was going to attack us. It didn't leave for about an hour, I piped in for the first time. Robinson looked at me with curious eyes. We called the police, but they thought we were crazy. That's what the police always say, Robinson finally said. They don't believe a single thing about those huge dogs. Great job, Jessie, Jake said excitedly through the mind link. You've seen these huge dogs too? I whispered. Countless of times, Robinson waved off. There was a mischievous look in his eyes. Have you guys ever heard of werewolves? What do you mean by werewolves? Jake asked, looking at Robinson weird. I almost laughed when Robinson smirked. Come on, kids, Robinson said smugly. You guys have a lot to learn. This guy is so gullible. Any werewolf could walk into here and find his secret stash of wolfsbane. Jake laughed through the mind link. He's smarter than you think. Once he finds out they're a wolf, he could just grab one of those guns from hell and shoot them dead in a couple of seconds. Oh, Jake realized, looking at me with fear. We followed Robinson, going through the door behind the counter. He led us through a long hallway and into a door that read, Caution, Electricity Panel. Enter at own risk. Robinson took out a key, opening the metal door. Jake said simply, looking at the wires and panel box in the small room. You wanted to show us the power room? Watch, kid. Robinson winked. He went to the far right of the small room and took out one panel from the wood wall. My eyes widened when a hidden white door appeared. Where are you taking us? I asked, pretending to be scared. It was all part of the act. I want to show you kids the guns we use to take down those big dogs, Robinson said excitedly. He opened the door, which had a small staircase that led to another door, a level down. We followed him in the dimly lit passageway to a metal door. You'll be amazed. Robinson opened the metal door and I cringed as the familiar smell hit me like a freight train. Each inhale burned holes in my lungs slowly. The amount of wolfsbane found in this room was enough to drain the energy from my body slowly. Jake cringed when he smelt it, grabbing my arm in fear. Calm down, Jake, I reassured him. You're going to make it obvious. Robinson turned on the lights of the room, my stomach twisting when it landed on each deadly weapon piled up inside the room. I gasped, lowly, so only I could hear it. This definitely is hell on earth. Robinson inhaled deeply and said, Personally, I love the smell of wolfsbane. What do you guys think? It smells like flowers. I'm not really a flower person, Jake dismissed, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. What's wolfsbane? I asked curiously, my eyebrows knitting together. It's a rare flower grown underground, Robinson states as if it was his prized possession. We boil it to mix its essence and herbs with the water. We soak the bullets and knives in them for a total of 48 hours so it is useful. I don't understand, Jake acted. What's so special about wolfsbane? Wolfsbane is a powerful medicine, Robinson smirked. We've been trying to get rid of those big dogs for years, but regular guns weren't working. We found out that once this medicine makes contact with those dogs, it is enough to sicken them and kill them. My wolf growled, but I forced it down. I wanted to smack Robinson for being so evil. After all, what did werewolves do to harm humans? Jake and I look at the guns, but we refuse to touch it. How much is your cheapest gun? Jake asked. I looked at Jake with shock. Play along, Jake linked. The AR-15 rifle is around $965. Jake whistled, running a hand through his light brown hair. That's a lot for a gun. We charge a lot because of its wolfsbane. Could we possibly get a better price? I asked Robinson, giving him a pleading look. We really need to get rid of those big dogs around our house for the safety of our baby sister, and we don't have the money. We were heading back up to the main store already, and I was nothing but glad to get out of that hellhole. Robinson was quiet for a moment before he walked us to the entrance. Well, my boss will be here on Wednesday if you kids are willing to come back and buy it. I'm pretty sure he'd make a deal with you guys. Jake nodded, looking over Robinson's head at a big portrait on the wall. There were about 50 guys with guns and big smiles on their faces. Do you guys have a mafia or something? Jake joked, pointing towards the portrait. Robinson laughed and patted Jake's back. That is my crew, son. We love hunting. It's our passion. Just the other day, we attacked those big dogs. We lost a few members of our crew, but that is our motivation to get back at those creatures. We have to do it for our fallen heroes. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. He talked about his crew as if they were the military, protecting the United States. At the same time, the hairs on my arm stood on end. Once again, we were faced with the reality that there were people who wanted to abolish us. Great, Jake plastered on a fake smile. We would love to talk to your boss. We left the store, driving away as quickly as possible. Jake slumped down in his seat, giving me a tired look. I can't believe we got a lead. All we have to do is meet the boss and see where to go from there. Yep, I said, popping the pea. That's what you had to go through? Jake whispered after a minute of silence. The tears threatened to spill any moment from the raw memories. I blinked it back, swallowed hard, and nodded. I'm sorry you went through a lot. I didn't know how to reply, so I nodded again. Jake sighed and decided to change the subject. So anyways, Nell and Harrison, he said on a lighter tone, spitting the name Harrison out, asked if we could show them the basic training that healers undergo each week. So we're going to train the representatives tomorrow morning. Oh, come on, I don't want to hit a girl, Nell whined, stomping like a 5-year-old. He crossed his arms over his bare chest, pouting his lips. The representatives of the Avalon and Stone Pack were giving Jake and me their undivided attentions. Although we were in September with the weather getting much colder, the men were shirtless and the women wore tank tops and sweats. Leave it to werewolves to sweat buckets with the temperature below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. My mind was still reeling with the fact that we found a lead towards our investigation. This was beneficial. We would know how to better prepare ourselves when the hunters and the rogues decide to attack us. However, for now, Jake and I kept our investigation between us until we get farther into it. That's not the reason you want Jake instead of me, is it? I teased, circling around Nell. You obviously don't think I'm a challenge. The first part of our training consisted with working out in our human forms, which most packs do. One thing we try to avoid is our animal side dominating our human side. That would lead to many tragedies and deaths. As healers, we start with grappling. I remember when I first started training with the healers, I was pinned down in a second flat. By now, I was stronger and faster. Therefore, here I was circling Nell while Jake and Perry already started grappling. Nell complained when he found out he was assigned to me. He thought I wasn't as challenging as Jake was. It's not that, Nell lied, eyes widening. I don't want to hit a girl. I used my inhuman speed to grab Nell's arm, pin him on the ground face down, and sit on top of him. Nell groaned when I pushed his arm farther behind his back. There were a few snickers from the people watching. Harrison's gaze made my skin tingle with heat. I tried to ignore it, but the lust in his eyes made me want to jump him right there and then. However, I had to remember that he wasn't mine and I wasn't his anymore. Just a little tip, I said loudly so everyone could hear. Do not underestimate your opponents. Even if they are girls. Expect the unexpected. I wasn't ready, Nell defended, his words muffled by the ground. Let's try this one more time. I nodded, getting up to my feet and Sam the grass off my black tights. Nell lunged for me, but I dodged it. I yawned when I dodged another one of his lunges. I smirked. Show off, Nell muttered. When Nell got a hold around my waist, I let him tackle me to the ground. He smiled, thinking he got me. However, I took a grab of his arm and twisted it. He let out a painful groan before laying in the grass next to me. You're good, Nell gasped, shaking out his arm. He ran in the direction of the lake. When I looked at Jake, he moved on to Jennifer, telling her tips while she nodded. Harry had already started running towards the lake where he would have to swim 10 laps and meet the rest of the group in the woods to play a game of hide and seek. Hide and seek was another way of testing your senses. I remember the time that Harrison helped me trained. That was one of my favorite training exercises. I quickly shook off the painful memories, smiling at Betty as she approached me. Betty and I circled around each other, her blue eyes shining with anticipation. When we neared each other, she made a quick lunge to the left as a fake. This caught me off guard. I moved to the opposite side as an instinct like she had planned. She quickly caught my legs in her small arms, tackling me to the ground. You go, baby, Brian yelled. You're better than Nell, I laughed when I managed to pin her down. Now, just keep that up and you'll do fine. Go run. Bossy, Betty smirked before saluting. Yes, boss. Ready to be taken down? Brian asked, smirking smugly as he approached me. Don't be so cocky, pretty boy, I smirked back. Brian was actually better than you think. He circled around me in his inhuman speed about 3 times. This was enough to have me confused. When I moved to get him, he dodged me and quickly wrapped his arm around my waist before tackling me to the ground. With my face in the dirt, I tried to wriggle free from his tight hold on my arms. In your face, Jessie, Brian hollered, his laughter booming in the air. When Brian felt my body go slack, he loosened his hold on me. This gave me enough time to turn around and slip from underneath him. When I was free, I grabbed his leg and flipped him in the air. He landed with a groan before I put my foot on his back. Tip, never trust your enemies, I smiled, laughing at him. That was no fair, Brian cried, getting up with a scowl on his face. It was fair, Jay, I rolled my eyes. When I looked up, Brian had an amused smile on his face. He pointed at my right cheek before bursting into laughter. You have on your face, Brian screamed. I felt the blood rush up to my cheeks before I wiped my face with my hand. That is not poop. That's mud, I defended, looking at the mud on my face. Whatever you say, seek a face, Brian smirked, running away before I could hit him. I took my towel from the ground, wiping the mud off my face before turning to look at who was left. My body froze as Jake and I stared at an uncomfortable Harrison. So, Harrison said, looking between Jake and me. Go, Jessie, Jake linked. I could see the smug smirk on his face. I can't wait to take this dog down. I think he'd match a black eye. As much as I was angry towards Harrison, I couldn't stand to see Jake beat him up in anger. I didn't want Harrison to get hurt in all honesty. I was scared of what the outcome would result in after their brawl. Harrison could kick us out anytime. Jake would kill him. Harrison would beat Jake to a pulp if Jake angered him. Therefore, I did the unthinkable. Jake, why don't you start the training with the others? I suggested, smiling sweetly at my cousin. Harrison's eyes widened in shock. Jessie, what are you doing? Just do this, for me. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I need to talk to Harrison, I lied. If he hurts you, then link me, okay? Then, I won't hesitate to kill this ass, Jake said after a while of contemplating. If you hurt her, Jake growled, I will kill you. Harrison simply rolled his eyes. I'd like to see you try. Are you calling me out, pup? Jake seethed, walking up to Harrison. "You're lucky Jessie cares too much for you to see you hurt, considering you hurt her practically almost every day." I cringed at Jake's words. He didn't have to mention that. Harrison growled when Jake walked away, before he lowered his eyes to look at me. When Jake was out of sight, Harrison stared at me with a look that I didn't even want to see right now. I felt like crying, the tears on brink of escaping. I held it in and stared right back. Harrison walked forward, close enough to grab my limp hand softly. I closed my eyes, feeling the tingles that shot all throughout my body from the small contact. "Jeez." Harrison's strained voice broke through the tense silence. "I know you won't believe me, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry for putting you through this. I'm sorry for hurting you." Suddenly, I felt angry. He wasn't sorry. If he were, he wouldn't even be doing what he did. "You're not sorry," I growled, my wolf angry too. I grabbed his hand with inhuman speed and I pinned him to the ground with more force than necessary. I tried to ignore the heat that was around us from being so close. I tried to forget that he was shirtless and that my hands were pressed on his muscular back. I tried to smell the fresh soil and grass instead of his scent. I tried, but I was failing. "I don't expect you to understand," Harrison groaned when I dug my knee into his back. He stayed there for a while before turning us around with his alpha strength and speed. He pins my arms above my hand, straddling my waist. "You need to calm down. You're grappling out of anger." "And?" I growled, turning us around so that I was on top. I let go of his arms so I could throw my hands in the air in sarcasm. "Is that a surprise?" I pushed his face down with my hands, waiting for him to tap out. He didn't even budge. He looked at me with seriousness, before running his hands from my ankles to my hips, agonizingly slow. "You need to calm down," he said. I froze, relishing the heat of his hands on my legs. The only thing separating the skin-to-skin contact was the thin fabric of my leggings. It took me a couple of seconds to regain composure, remembering what was really going on here. Now, I was furious. He was playing me again. He was doing all of this while he had a girlfriend who loved him very much. Sarah didn't deserve the same heartbreak that I went through. I growled at him, baring my canines. Harrison's crystal blue eyes widened before he turned around without struggle. I placed my hands on his chest to push him off, but I froze. My growls came short when I felt his face near my neck. I couldn't think anymore. I couldn't remember why I was angry. In fact, I think I forgot that I was angry when he placed his hands on my hips. Because my shirt rode up a little, his thumbs stroked circular patterns on the bare skin of my tummy. I drew in a shaky breath when I felt his hot breath on my neck. My hands on his chest somehow found its way onto his shoulders. I gripped it when he ran his nose along my neck, inhaling deeply. "Calm down, please," Harrison whispered, kissing his mark. I shuddered, drinking in this moment that I have missed so much. He pulled away, looking at me with his darkened eyes. His dark eyes melted into his blue ones as he stared at me with longing. I could feel my heartbeat freeze as I saw him closer and closer. He stopped and just looked at me. I couldn't take it any longer. I lifted my head off the ground, brushing my lips with his for a fraction of a second. With the low moan that escaped Harrison's lips, I think I could die of cardiac arrest. The tingles and the heat intensified, and I could hear my wolf purring. Dropping my head back to the ground, I tangled my hands into his black hair. He looked at me, coming closer and closer until we were an inch apart. "Harrison? Betty? Is anyone there?" A familiar female voice called out. I could hear pounding on the door of the house. "What was that?" I whispered, brushing my lips with his once again. "I don't care," he said. "Is anyone home?" the voice said again. Then my werewolf hearing picked up its muttering. I swore Harrison told me he'd take me on a date today. The moment came crashing down like a bucket of ice-cold water. Harrison didn't seem to notice, still looking at me. I frowned, feeling the tears escape. I'm such an idiot. I fell for him again. "What's wrong?" Harrison asked, dark eyebrows knitting together in confusion. He brought his hand up to wipe my tears, but I quickly pushed him off. I got up and started walking away from him. He stayed on the ground, trying to process what is happening. "What happened?" Sarah's at the front door. "Don't forget you have a date today." I turned around to face him. He flinched when he saw my flushed face, tears falling freely. In that moment, I didn't care. His face flashed with irritation. When he was about to say something, I stopped him. "Forget what happened, okay? It was a mistake." I ran into the house and up the stairs, ignoring Harrison's calls. "So, nothing went wrong with you and Harrison?" Jake asked for the 1,000th time. He sounded surprised, looking at me over his sunglasses with skepticism. "So, how come the two of you disappeared after your grappling session?" "Nothing," I lied smoothly, feeling guilty for hiding things from Jake. Hey, they do say that ignorance is bliss. He had a date with Sarah and I called my mom. I wasn't completely lying. Harrison did have a date with Sarah and I did call my mom to vent out everything that happened. My mom just sighed, telling me that we wouldn't be able to fight this any longer. That hard truth scared me. Right, Jake said with disbelief, leaning back in the passenger seat. Whenever you're comfortable enough to stop lying to me, I'll be here. I gulped, staring hard at the road in front of me. Good thing we decided to discuss this while I was driving. It gave me a distraction and he didn't have to see the guilt in my eyes. So, what do you think this boss guy is like? I asked, digressing from the previous topic. I didn't feel like talking about Harrison today, and I didn't feel like dealing with him. I was lucky that we didn't bump into each other in the kitchen as usual, because I knew he wanted to talk about what happened yesterday. Harrison was one to look for closure and to clear everything up. I was one to run away. Jake was right after all. He's probably some bald-headed man who wears Yankees caps and still lives with his mother, Jake said with disgust. What vile humans. They attack those who didn't even do anything in the first place. Haven't they heard of animal abuse? You do realize you called us animals, right? I asked, raising my eyebrows. You know what I mean, Jake muttered. I just can't wait to figure out this whole case, find out what to do, and bring down the people who hurt Aunt Angela. Revenge is not the answer. Aren't you angry at the people who hurt your mother? Yeah, I am angry, I stated the obvious. But I never see the point in revenge. All it does is prove who the biggest immature one is. I want to end this fight, not give them any other reason to get back at us. After a couple of seconds, Jake said, I guess you're right. When we pulled up in the familiar parking space, I stared at the small red and white building. Its sign was worn out, peeling red paint. The glass windows and doors showed the interior of the store. Empty guns lined up. Who the hell names their store the Big Shot? Jake scoffed. Show-offs. You're just biased because these people are trying to kill us, I laughed, slightly cringing at the thought. Come on, drama queen. It's showtime. When we entered the small store, a skinny man with a faded blue cap looked up from his book on the counter. Kids, I knew you'd show up, Robinson called out in his raspy voice. Of course, Jake said, plastering a fake smile identical to the one on my face. How are you kids today? Robinson asked, as if he knew us for a long time. How are you liking Lancetown? Lancetown is interesting, I said, examining a picture of Robinson near a dead elk. Sure is. Robinson noticed me scrutinizing his photo. He smiled at me, obviously proud of his accomplishment. That was 2 weeks ago. I shot it with my rifle. It was huge. It was the biggest deer Lancetown men have ever hunted. I was proud of myself for taking down that monster. Like I said, something must be in the water here. These animals are huge, Jake joked before getting back to business. So, is your boss here? Yeah, he's just in the back. I'll get him for you, Robinson said before disappearing into the back hallway. Aidan, the kids I was telling you about are here, we heard him say. When Aidan came out of the hallway, the first thing I noticed was the long scar across his cheek. No doubt was it from one of his hunter endeavors. His smile was big and friendly. You'd think he was one of those car salesperson who tried to convince you to buy the most expensive car in the lot. His brown and white hair was cut short and tidy. When he smiled, the corners by his brown eyes crinkled. He had the hunter's built. Hello, I'm Aidan, he said, sticking his hand out. Jake, my cousin introduced with a smile, shaking his hand firmly. Jessie, I simply said, giving his hand a timid shake. So, Robinson here tells me that you're looking for a gun because you've spotted huge dogs around your house, Aidan says, making it sound like a question. Yes, that is correct, Jake confirmed. Where do you live? Aidan asks casually. When Jake doesn't answer, I pipe in. Jake doesn't know Lancetown like I do, and I knew he would stumble upon that question. In 8th Avenue, near the forest? Oh, yes, there has been sighting there, Aidan says, still smiling. He turned back to Jake, patting a hand on his shoulder. You look like a strong man, son. My eyes widened, knowing exactly what he was going to ask Jake. It was written over his prideful face. Robinson was literally jumping in excitement, smiling brightly. Jessie, do you think I should join them as a spy? Jake linked. That could be a good idea, Jake. But it's going to be quite dangerous. Don't worry, Jessie. I will be fine. If we ever have a chance to bring the group down, then this is it. I will sell the gun to you for $500, but on one condition, Aidan continued. We need a young man on the group who's strong and healthy. Since you've seen the special guns down in the basement, we figured you'd be a great addition. The Lancetown men would be honored if you decide to join us. Thank you, sir. I am utterly flattered, Jake says, pretending to accept his goodwill. I'm quite delighted to be referred to as a strong man who's willing to take his own responsibility. So yes, I am here to join your group. Joyce is full of Robinson's face. Aidan shared a big smile with us, he said. I'm so happy to hear that, son. Come back here tomorrow, and I will recognize you as a formal member of us and give you some basic training, the man told Jake. Actually, I said, trying to switch the topic a bit so that we don't need to hear his so-called great course any longer. We just came here to share our gratitude towards the brave men who protect the community. Robinson told us about your massive attack a few days ago. We only noticed now that we haven't seen the dogs around. Gag. I guess you scared them away. Jake smiles, patting Aidan's shoulder this time. Thank you, Aidan. You are a man of bravery. I will come back here tomorrow. Robinson and Aidan nodded their head. And also, Aidan continued to speak up, taking out a small white card from his pocket and writing something down on it. Here is my number. If anything happens, just call me. As for the gun you were asking for, I will give it to you as a gift when you are done with your basic training. Good luck, boy. Jake takes the paper, stuffing it into his wallet. We mutter our goodbyes before shuffling out of the suffocating room. Piling into my Pegasus, we both sigh simultaneously. That was unexpected, Jake finally said, but he just offered us a great opportunity. An opportunity which could possibly bring down their group. Jake, promise me, just be careful, all right? I want you to return to us intact, I pleaded him. Don't you worry, Jessie. Didn't you hear him say? I'm a strong man. Jake, don't you find it a bit weird? When we first went there, we were asking for a gun, but instead selling us the gun, he offered you to join their group, and promised us that he would give you the gun after your basic training. Why? Yeah, that is quite strange. But I don't think he have figured out that we are werewolves. Well, I guess we'll see. Hey, best friend, I say, plopping down on the couch and ruffling Brian's blonde hair. Brian lowers down the volume to his horror movie while I throw my feet over his lap. When he pushes them off, I bring it back up. You're irritating, Brian jokes, poking my side. You're just jealous that I'm cooler than you, I smirk, grabbing popcorn out of his bowl. Says the girl that was too scared to skip on senior skip day. Hey, there's a difference between being a delinquent and being cool, I defended. So, what happened with you and Harrison yesterday? Brian smirks. Don't lie to me either. Your scent was so strong on Harrison when we had our alpha discussion. Jay, I rolled my eyes, trying to push down the blush that dared to color my cheeks. We were grappling. Of course my scent would be on him. Yeah, that's what Harrison said, Brian waved off. You grappled with me, Betty, and Nell. Your scent wasn't as strong as it was on him. He was also distracted, looking like a lovesick puppy. You're imagining things, I muttered. Sure, I was as red as a tomato now. He was distracted? Well, you're blushing, Brian yelled, pointing his finger at my face. Spill. You're such a gossip girl. No, I just care for my best friend. Fine, I huffed. Well, most standings were getting pretty intense, but Sarah came in, which is pretty good. What? Brian smirked, obviously catching what I said. I didn't understand you. I sighed. We almost kissed, and things were getting pretty intense. I blame myself. I initiated it. Sarah interrupted our almost kiss, so it was perfect timing. I knew it, Brian smiled. Why are you smiling? Aren't you supposed to be angry or something? No, Brian said, shaking his head. I have a mate, and I'm kind of hoping you two will forgive each other like normal mates do. Whatever, I wave off, trying to change the subject. Why are you by yourself? Betty went somewhere, Brian said, a frown replacing his smile. Where did she go? She and Harrison went to visit their dad at the cell. The experts permanently locked their dad's werewolf abilities and he's going to be locked up for life, Brian said, clutching his hands into fist. My eyes bulged out of their sockets while my mouth flew open. Their dad, previous alpha, was in jail? My heart pounded, remembering what Harrison told me about the man. He used to abuse Betty because she reminded him too much of his deceased wife. I knew how much Harrison was hurt because of his dad's doings, and it pained me to know I didn't know that his dad had went to jail. It pained me to know that something tragic must have happened that caused their dad to end up where he is now. Did he beat up Betty? Did Harrison have to call the experts on his own father? Right when I was about to say something, I heard the front door open and close softly. Brian got up to hug Betty, who sobbed softly into his gray sweatshirt. Harrison walked past the living room and out onto the porch with his head hung low. Before I knew it, I found myself sitting next to him on the porch steps. It was a comfortable silence. Hugh, it was a comfortable silence. The wind was a slight breeze, causing our hair to move around us. It took me a couple of minutes to talk. I was afraid to break the peacefulness that we actually had right now. I knew it was a stupid question, but I asked anyways. Are you okay? I muttered, looking at his face. As redundant as I sound, I couldn't get over how handsome Harrison was. Even when he was angry or sad, he was still as handsome as ever with his defined jaw, strong cheekbones, and blue eyes framed by dark eyelashes that any girl would envy. His lips were set in a thin line. I'll be okay, he mumbled. I heard about your dad being locked up, I said. He nodded. Do you want to talk about it? I stuffed my hands in my pocket, looking at his profile. He hung his head down before picking it up to stare at nothing in particular. I came home after a meeting with the representatives to grab some stuff Betty wanted. My dad was drunk as usual, slurring out and crying about how much he missed my mom. I decided to ignore it. I didn't know Betty was downstairs with him. She hasn't even been home since the last time he hit her. Remember when I told you about that story? He looked at me when I nodded. She was telling him that my mom was in a better place, and according to Betty, he nodded and said that Betty was right. He told her he was hungry, so Betty cooked him food. All of a sudden, I heard a huge crash and Betty screaming. I ran out as fast as I could. I saw my sister on the ground with the pan of hot food on her. She looked like a wreck. She was crying. Her hair was all over the place. She had a bruise on her cheek. For a werewolf to have a bruise, they must have been hit hard. Harrison's voice quavered when he talked about how he discovered Betty. I scooted closer, putting a hand on his shoulder for comfort. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to," I whispered. In all honesty, I was scared for him to go on. It felt like my ears were deceiving me. I wanted to cry for my mate. I felt the emotions he was feeling. I felt sick listening to what Betty had to go through. "It's okay," Harrison said. So anyways, I saw my dad with the pan in his hand. It was raised, like he was about to hit her again. I jumped in front of Betty, pushing my dad back. He stumbled, looking at me angrily. If he wasn't locked up from his werewolf abilities, he would have shifted. He started yelling at me for protecting my sister, the girl that was a stupid idiot in his eyes. Imagine what Betty must have felt hearing that from her own dad. I asked him why he was doing this to his own daughter. He only laughed and said that Betty made food our mom always made. Well, of course Betty did. She learned how to cook for my mom. When I told him he was an asshole, I told him that was the last time he was ever going to see us. I started picking Betty off the floor, comforting her. The next thing I know, he took the kitchen knife and threatened us. I pushed Betty behind me, telling my dad to calm down. He was angry, so he slashed my arm pretty deep. Harrison sighed, picking up his shirt sleeve to point out a light scar on his muscled bicep. Now that he pointed it out, I was well aware of it. I gasped lowly, picking up a shaking hand to trace it with my index finger. Looks like we had a lot in common. Both of our dads harmed us. Different us. Fate had a funny way of choosing mates for people. Soon after, an expert and Brian showed up in the kitchen. Betty later told me she linked Brian for help. The expert took down my dad, and because they had powers that we don't, paralyzed him. So that's how my dad ended up being locked up. We visited him today because the experts called us in for a meeting. Our dad was actually sober. What also was hard to believe was the repetitive apologies coming from him. Harrison sighed, breathing hard. He still didn't look at me. Before I could think twice, I wrapped my arms around his neck and hugged him. He was shocked, but he wrapped his arms around my waist. "You and Betty didn't deserve that," I said genuinely, still holding on to him. "I'm sorry it happened." "Thanks," he said when we let go. "So what's going to happen to him? He's going to be locked up for life." Werewolves are into family because they have this mentality that fate has given you a beautiful gift if you had a family. If you physically harm your loved ones with no valid reason, you committed a crime. How do you feel about your dad being locked up? He deserves it, but I also think it's good for him. He'll get better. How often do you visit him? Every month we have a meeting with him. It's harder for Betty. He did say a lot of nasty things to her. Betty is a fantastic daughter. Your father was wrong, I defended, sticking my hands into my coat pocket. "Thanks, Jessie." Harrison smiled, looking at me. "You're the only one I've actually talked to about this. You're the one who seems to actually care about what I feel." His statement surprised me. I wanted to ask him why he doesn't talk to Sarah about this, or why Sarah doesn't care, but then I remembered that she doesn't know about our supernatural being. So instead, I smiled back at him and lay my head against his shoulder. I don't know what caused my actions, especially since I wasn't on speaking terms with him just an hour ago. It just felt like the right thing to do, and I wanted to comfort him. In fact, I was tired of fighting with him and bickering. Why couldn't we just be civil? Harrison, can we be civil? Can we be friends? I'm so tired of fighting. I sighed, waving my white flag. Being friends was better than nothing. Harrison's blue eyes widened before a full-blown smile stretched across his face. I'm tired of fighting too, Jessie. Friends, he said, sticking out his hand to shake. Friends, I smiled, feeling a huge weight lift off my shoulders. There was one thing I've always wanted to talk to you about Harrison for a long time now. I've been itching to ask him even before I came to Lancetown. It was a question that haunted the both of us, I'm sure. What about Scott? I asked cautiously. Saw him stiffen beside me. Have you visited him? When I moved to live with the Wood family, I had nightmares every night. I was suffering post-traumatic stress from the events that happened that night. I remember screaming in the middle of the night, my relatives barging in with wide eyes. The wolfsbane would be fresh in my nose. The sight of my mother and Daisy flashed beneath my closed lids, their blood and bruises visible on their dirty skin. My father wanted to kill me, the cold blade pressing into my skin. My dad about to plunge a knife into my mother's heart. My dad dying. Scott wanted to kill my mate. It was a lot to handle, being in a situation like that for the first time. I genuinely wanted to know how Scott was. Last thing I heard about him was that he was in a facility, getting better. Apparently, he wasn't in his state of mind when he attacked us. He's going to be in the facility for another year before they release him, Harrison said, scratching the back of his neck. Do you know why he went crazy? He was injected with a type of herbal from an ancient book when he was depressed. This lets you turn off your human feelings, but it is also very dangerous. It causes your animal side to dominate and your negative emotions to enhance. Why were his parents killed? I asked him, looking at him with a torn expression. Healers don't just kill werewolves without valid reasons. That's why I didn't want to kill healers, Jessie. They didn't do anything wrong. Scott's parents harmed many people to get a cure for Scott's dad. He was suffering from a huge sickness that was going to kill him soon. Due to the many fatalities, they were subject to die. I just nodded and I felt bad for Scott. He was depressed and he was acting on a drug. He wasn't in his right state of mind and his parents were fighting for each other. Of course he would think it was the right thing to do to try and heal each other. He loved his parents and he had to lose them. He became depressed. Have you visited him? I asked Harrison, laying my head on his shoulder again. After a couple of seconds, Harrison sighed and said, "No, I'm scared." There was a pang in my chest because of how broken he sounded. He's my best friend and I hate seeing him so weak. He tried to kill me and I know it wasn't on purpose. I knew he was angry because I didn't do anything about his parents' death. I should have done something. At least tell him what his parents did. He doesn't know about his parents killing humans. What kid wants to hear that their amazing and superhero parents killed about 50 people? I stiffened when I heard this information. So Scott didn't know the truth? That made more sense. I always wanted to visit him, but I just can't bring myself to see him, Harrison said. I studied him and I knew that if my best friend was sick, I'd be scared to visit too. So I smiled and nudged his arm with my elbow. Come on, we're going to visit him tomorrow. You need to see him. I know it's a huge weight on his shoulders to know that he did this to his best friend. You need to find closure. Jessie, no, we're going, Harrison. But no buts. I will drag you if I have to. I don't. It's not a good idea, but it's for the best. What about you? You're not fine with this, are you? Yes, I'm okay with it, I lied. Please, Jessie. I don't. You have to go sometime. Might as well go now. After contemplating, Harrison sighed. Fine. Although I was scared to see Scott myself, I had to find my closure with him as well. The West Mental Hospital was situated near a lake and a private property. The leaves were beginning to yellow. This area was clean and polished, considering it was an institute for the mentally disturbed. The building was perfectly painted, a warm beige color with its name written in black across the front entrance. It was fairly big, standing at 3 stories high, round curtains covered glass windows. Harrison had told me this was one of the 2 mental hospitals in Michigan. We were lucky it was only a 45-minute drive from Lancetown. Harrison also informed me that these institutes were in private places and all werewolf doctors here did have a degree. Harrison and I stared at the building for a few minutes longer before I muttered, "Are you ready?" "Nope." I was never ready. "You dragged me here," Harrison said, turning back to face my Pegasus. "Why don't we go back home? Scott's probably sleeping. I don't want to disturb him. No, we're doing this, and if we have to stay here for a whole night for you to finally go inside, then we will." Harrison groaned, stuffing his hands in his leather jacket. "Why are you so stubborn?" "I've always been stubborn," I smirked, pulling my knit beanie over my head. "I'm here, Harrison. I'll help you." While Harrison stared at the building again with fear, I slipped my hand into his warm one. I didn't miss the tingles that ignited in every cell of my body. "Come on, you could do this," I smiled up at him. We started walking towards the entrance and I was pretty sure Harrison's hand was starting to sweat. I couldn't blame him. I was scared and nervous to see the person who tried to kill us. The double door slid open and the lady at the front desk smiled warmly at us. Her black hair was pulled up into a bun and her brown eyes calculated us. "Hello," she called out. "Hi," I said when Harrison didn't say anything. "We're looking for Scott Green. Mr. Green has a lot of friends," the woman said with enthusiasm while digging in a drawer. She pulled out a clipboard and a pen. "Please just sign in here, and before you leave, you must sign out." I nodded, signing my name in and practically forcing Harrison to sign his name. After we signed in, the lady instructed us to go to the second floor, turn right, and find room number 206. I muttered a thank you and dragged Harrison along with me. I don't think I could do this, Harrison said, pacing inside the elevator while tugging at his black hair. Harrison, calm down, I said, grabbing his hand and walking onto the second floor. The white linoleum floors were shiny under the fluorescent light. There was the smell of werewolf everywhere, mixed in with a slight trace of vanilla. The doors were a dark mahogany, numbers painted on the wood. He was breathing hard and I had to stop to look at him. Look, I'm nervous too, I said slowly. It was true. My heart was pounding against my ribcage and the memories of him flashed through my head. I forced the vile images out of my head. Scott was better now. I just knew it. So, why are you doing this? Harrison Whisper yelled. Let's just go. Give your best friend a chance, I said comfortingly. He still looked unconvinced, so I tubbed his hand in front of Scott's door. I could hear the television on a football game. My heart was pounding and I tightened my hold on Harrison's hand. Harrison stood close behind me and I could feel his nervousness. I jumped slightly when I heard a familiar male cheer for his team, a voice I haven't heard in months. We could do this, I said, glancing over my shoulder to look at Harrison. He looked down before nodding slowly. I twisted the knob, opening the door slowly and tugging Harrison behind me. Scott was in his bed, which was pushed to one side of the room. A lamp was on a nightstand right next to bed. Under the window was a desk with a few notebooks and pencils. A dresser and a closet was side by side. To the immediate right of us was the door leading to the bathroom. We walked in a little bit for Scott to see us. When his brown eyes met ours, it widened into saucers. His mouth opened to say something, but nothing came out. His posture stiffened, and there a million apologies written in his brown orbs. Hey, Scott, I said, smiling when nobody said anything. I gave him a small wave. I'm dreaming, he said, running his hand in his brown hair before pinching himself. No, you're not, I laughed. After a couple of minutes of staring at us, Scott hung his head and started crying. His shoulders moved up and down, and he tried to muffle his sobs down. He looked up at us with tear-filled eyes. You guys don't realize how much I'm so sorry, he said. I'm so immensely, truly sorry for what I did. There are no excuses for my bad behavior. It was wrong, and I don't expect you guys to forgive me, but I'm sorry. I smiled widely at him, my own tears rolling down my cheeks. I looked up to see Harrison with a serious expression, staring at Scott. He still hasn't said anything. Gosh, I'm such a pussy, Scott said, rubbing furiously at his tears. I laughed lightly at him. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that to you, Jessie. I really shouldn't. I'm not going to try to make up excuses because that would just make me feel so much worse. Harrison, I'm so sorry too. I'm sorry I turned my back on the one person who has been there for me this whole time. I'm sorry I had such negative thoughts on my best friend. I just lost more when I did what I did. No, I'm sorry, Harrison said for the first time before giving him a small smile. I should have done more to help you. I'm also sorry that it took me so long to come visit you. I didn't expect you to come. I thought you guys hated me, Scott said, standing up from his bed. We don't hate you, I said before flinging my arms around Scott. I suddenly felt bad for him with everything that Harrison told me yesterday. We just want to help, Scott cried into my hair a little longer before mumbling apologies repeatedly. I patted his back, telling him it was okay. When we parted, I smiled widely when Harrison and Scott did the man hug thing, patting each other's back hard. Man, I've missed you, Scott said when he stood in front of us. Hey, Harrison said, slapping Scott on the back. I've got to ask you a serious question though. What is it? Scott asked. Anything. I'll try to answer to the best of my abilities. Do you know anything about the hunters that are trying to attack us? Harrison said, looking seriously at Scott. Scott's eyes showed it all. Confusion? Don't lie to us, Scott. If you do, you will be sentenced to death for planning a second attack on werewolves. Harrison, I gasped, looking at him sternly. No, it's okay, Jessie, Scott smiled before turning to look at Harrison. I really don't know what's going on. The only person I've ever talked to about attacking people was Jessie's dad. There's an attack? Okay, don't worry about that, I told him, pushing him towards his bed. Are you lying? Harrison said, ignoring my glares. He crossed his arms over his chest. Harry, I know it's hard to trust me with everything that happened. It's understandable. I'm telling the truth when I say I don't know what is going on. I swear to God. After a few more questioning from an unconvinced Harrison, I interrupted. So, how are you? I asked. Harrison took a seat on a chair near the bed while I sat on Scott's bed. Harrison leaned forward, concerned over his friend's health. Good, Scott said enthusiastically. They put me on some medications to drain out those herbs and I feel like a new man. Daisy and I are on the right track and I'm happy. I'm happy that you guys are here too. That's good, Harrison said. The only thing I don't like is the assignments they let us do. It's cheesy. Painting and coloring? I saw your smiley face out in the hole. Good effort, Harrison laughed. You've always been jealous of my artistic skills, White. I smiled when I saw the two best friends joking around. Harrison slapped Scott across the head and Scott put Harrison in a headlock. It was refreshing to see that they were going to be all right. Harrison wasn't going to completely trust him, and I wasn't going to completely trust him either. By being here, we were trying to find closure on what had happened that night, and we were accomplishing that task. After a few more minutes of small talk, visiting hours for the afternoon period was over. Harrison and I piled into my Pegasus, looking at the building with small smiles on our faces. I still don't trust him, Harrison sighed. I don't either, I said. But it's a start. It was nice seeing you joke around with him. Yeah, it was just like old times before he started getting depressed. He's getting better. I could see it. So how did you feel going in there? Harrison asked, slouching in his seat. I was scared, actually. I think I was as scared as you. I wasn't scared, Harrison defended, puffing out his chest slightly. I had to practically drag you in the room. If it were for other reasons, I wouldn't mind going in a room with you, Harrison joked, throwing a wink my way. Although I laughed at that, I punched his chest. This friendship thing is getting to your head, Dot. Oh, so the old nickname comes back, Harrison hollered, rolling down his window and sticking his head out. It must be a miracle, he yelled to the sky. She is no longer the rampaging woman on her menopause. I hit him again and he laughed. I'm kidding, Jess, he said, smiling at me. I couldn't help the smile that graced my face too. It was nice talking and laughing with Harrison again. It probably wasn't going to always be easy like this, but again, it was a start. We just stared at each other smiling before Harrison took me in his muscled arms. Thanks, Jess, he whispered. I mean it. Lancetown, I muttered repeatedly, poising my hands over Jake's palm. Inhaling deeply, I concentrated on the task at hand. I opened my eyes to look at Jake's hand, groaning in disappointment. Why can't I get this right? I dropped my hands onto my thighs with a loud slap, throwing my head back in frustration. Don't beat yourself up, Jessie, Jake encouraged. Just try again. You're practically bleeding to death because of me, I muttered pointedly, sighing when I saw Jake's frightened face. We were in the kitchen, practicing my healing abilities. 14 months of training, and I still haven't perfected my powers. Oh! Every time I tried, I would fail miserably while Jake's wound would get worse with every attempt. It would usually go like this. Jake would randomly train me. He'd take a knife and cut a small slash on his palm. Before it would heal due to his werewolf abilities, I'd start with what I was taught. I would recite the words, Lancetown repeatedly with my eyes closed, trying to get in touch with nature. I don't even know what language those two words were from, but I do know in English it meant healing. When I'd open my eyes, Jake's wound would be bigger, bleed more, or get deeper. Obviously, that was far from being healed. That meant only one thing. I know. I failed, and I kept failing. Just try again, Jake urged again, looking at his bloody hand. You'll get it eventually. Are you sure? You just don't want to stop now? I asked, knitting my eyebrows in concern. He literally looked like he was in pain. Every time I'd ask him how it felt, he'd lie and say it didn't feel like anything. However, I knew it was either stinging, burning, or aching. I'm fine. Let's just continue, Jake reassured, holding his bloody hand out to me. He wiped off blood with the third napkin he used today. Okay, I said after a couple of seconds. I closed my eyes, poising my hand over his palm. Inhaling, I recited, Lancetown, Lancetown, yeah, Lancetown, yeah, Lancetown, yeah, Lancetown. I opened my eyes and groaned once more. The wound was leaking out blood. Lancetown, I concentrated. Lancetown, 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 Lancetown. I felt like crying when once again it didn't work. Banging my head onto the table, I whined. I'm such a useless healer. You are not, Jake scolded, wiping blood off his hand. Never say a healer is useless, even if you are talking about yourself. How come I always fail? You got it in a few weeks, so how come it's taking me so long? I complained, getting mad at myself for constantly failing. You just need to find yourself, Jake said. Maybe it isn't your time yet. You need to get in touch with nature. You need to put down the wall that's between the both of you. What the hell? How do you do that? I don't know, Jake screamed back, frightened by my anger. He looked funny with his brown eyes widening and his shoulders going up. I never had to go through that. I'm sorry. I feel so stupid. You keep teaching me and I never learn from my mistakes. I'm sorry, Jake, I said, tugging at my long brown hair. Come on, Jake sighed, putting his hand in front of me. Let's try this one more time. Fine, I huffed, closing my eyes. I concentrated hard, calling out to nature. Losetark, 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 still bleeding. Losetark, Losetark, yeah, Losetark, yeah, Losetar. What the hell are you doing to Jake? A male voice shouted, breaking my concentration. I opened my eyes and groaned. Turning around to glare at the ginger, I crossed my arms over my chest. Why are you killing him? Perry yelled at me, looking at Jake's hand with wide eyes. Jake just smirked, amused by the situation. And what the so are you saying? Is it some type of witchcraft? I've always known you were evil. Gee, thanks, Perry, I replied sarcastically. I was practicing my healer abilities, by the way. Perry's eyebrows knitted together, scrutinizing Jake's bloody hand and the 3 bloody napkins next to him. His eyebrows shot up before he looked at me. You're doing a great job, Jessie, he lied. Perry was always a bad liar. He threw a thumb up in my direction before heading out the door. Okay, let's continue, Jake encouraged, sticking his hand in front of me. I think we should take a break. I'm not feeling it anymore. Jessie, you'll get it someday. If you want to practice some more, I'm more than willing to help you out. Jake, I'm not in the mood anymore, I said in disappointment, avoiding his penetrating gaze. I don't want that wound to worsen, especially with my added negativity. Don't give up. I'm not giving up. I'm just taking a break. I'm sure I'd get it sooner or later, I said, trying to convince him. It sounded like I was trying to convince myself as well. Okay, well, I'm just going to clean this up and cook something. Do you want anything? I shook my head, getting up and walking up the stairs. I decided to ask Harrison about what the hunters and rogues want as part of our investigation. After convincing Jake that I would be fine talking to Harrison by myself, he gave in and agreed to the idea. I was confident that Harrison would share the information with me because we were on speaking terms. He always used to tell me things that dealt with werewolf business. Therefore, I decided to give it a shot and ask him. Harrison, I called when I knocked on his bedroom door. It's Jessie! There was no response. I was sure he was home. His car was parked in the garage and he would have announced his departure, telling us to call him if anything went wrong. Harrison, I called again, knocking on the door continually. When there was no response, I opened his bedroom door slowly. His scent crashed into me. Unintentionally, I let out a low moan. It was tidy and it was empty. A king-size bed with white bed sheets was pushed up against one beige wall. A small leather couch and a single beanbag was situated in front of a hanging, flat-screen television. The window across the room was draped with white curtains. Underneath the window was a desk with several papers scattered along the surface and a laptop in the middle. To the left were 2 doors that led to his bathroom and his closet. Before I could close the door and leave, something on his nightstand caught my eye. I walked in, shutting the door behind me and walking over to the picture frame. I scrutinized it with my eyebrows drawn together in confusion. In the middle of the black, intricate border was a picture of Harrison and me. My arms were around his neck, hugging him from behind. My smile was wide as he kissed me on the cheek. We were messing around and Betty decided to take a picture of us with her DSLR camera. I was beyond confused. Why did he have our photo on his nightstand? Doesn't Sarah come in here? Has she seen this photo? What the hell was that foul smell? I scrunched up my nose when I caught a slight trace of something tainted. If I were a regular werewolf, I wouldn't have caught the scent. Being a healer, everything was heightened. Why did it smell so familiar? I decided to take a big inhale of the air around me. Despite Harrison's delicious scent, that slight trace was disturbing. My wolf was prancing around me. Before I knew it, my feet were moving around the room while I tried to find out where it was coming from. I knew it was wrong, snooping around Harrison's stuff, but the scent was bugging me. I bent down near Harrison's bed where the scent was much stronger. I resisted the urge to gag. Looking under his bed, I saw something wrapped in a bunch of Harrison's clothes. I pulled out the pile of clothes and put it in front of me. When Harrison's clothes were in a neat pile next to me, a huge black box was facing me. The smell was stronger now, causing my eyes to water at its stench. I opened the box slowly. Then I threw it across the room, staring at it with horror-stricken eyes. My hand was trembling as I brought it up to cover my open mouth. Why did Harrison have a rifle, a case of 100 wolfsbane-laced bullets, and a wolfsbane-laced spear? Before I could hide any evidence that I was there and run out as quickly as possible, the door opened. Harrison stood before me, observing the weapons in the corner. "Jessie," Harrison asks cautiously, looking at me with intense eyes. What are you doing in my room? What are you doing in my room? Harrison asked curiously. Jessie, it's not what it looks like, Harrison said slowly as I glared at him. Hot tears were streaming down my flushed face. I was angry. Scratch that. I was furious. What the hell was he doing with those vile weapons? There were many questions popping up in my head, but I couldn't bring myself to speak it out loud. Maybe I was assuming things. I don't know, but actually possessing those weapons instead of throwing it out did not make sense for a werewolf. Enlighten me, Harrison, I said angrily. I motioned my hand towards the weapons in the corner. Why the hell do you have those? Calm down, Harrison said cautiously, putting his hands up and walking towards me. Don't touch me. I stepped back. Harrison flinched, returning his arms to his side. Why do you have it? I asked once again. I have it because I found it during the attack, Harrison sighed. I didn't want anyone to find out about it. Why not? I snapped. Because they were going to freak out like what you're doing right now and they wouldn't hesitate to throw it out, Harrison answered. Why do you have it? I've been trying to find a way to avoid being affected by these things when the hunters and rogues attack. I've been searching in every ancient book and talking to every elder, but I haven't found anything, Harrison said tiredly. I felt my anger diminish as I heard his reason for possessing the rifle, bullets, and a spear. Turns out, it wasn't only Jake and I doing our separate investigations. I sat down next to Harrison, contemplating whether I should tell him what Jake and I had found out. I chose not to. Jake wouldn't be too happy with me if I shared out information with Harrison out of all people. I'm sorry, I said after a couple of seconds. I shouldn't have assumed the worst. It's normal. Everyone does, right? Harrison smiled tightly. Anyways, what are you doing in my room? I laughed nervously. Well, I came here to ask you a question, but something caught my eye and I went to look at it. I'm nosy, I know. I've always been. Maybe that's when I caught a whiff of the wolfsbane. You know, healers have enhanced senses. I was being nosy again. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Harrison cut off my babbling. What caught your eye? He asked, his blue eyes burning with curiosity. I felt the blood rush to my cheeks. Well, I found that. I stumbled to get the words out, pointing at the picture frame. I might be imagining things, but I swore Harrison's cheek had the slightest tint of pink. He scratched the back of his neck. Oh, Harrison said after a while. Yeah, I said awkwardly when he didn't explain further. I really wanted to know why he still had it. I mean, he did have a girlfriend. Wasn't he scared that Sarah was going to find it? Sure, I had a picture of us, but he had a girlfriend now. So, what did you want to ask me? He digressed. Okay, so I was wondering. I clapped my hands together and got down to business. What do the hunters and rogues want? What's that important? Harrison's face fell and he clenched his jaw. His posture stiffened. I'm sorry, but I can't tell you. Why not? I shot up to my feet, placing my hands on my hips. Only Brian and I know? It's classified information. It's better if nobody else knew, Harrison explained. Please just leave it at that. I want to help, I yelled. I feel so useless sitting here. You're not useless, Harrison said calmly. You didn't change, did you? You're still nosy, demanding, angry, stubborn, and a little psycho, he joked, smirking. I'm serious. I slapped his chest lightly. You're still violent. Harrison ignored my serious expression, listing down more of my negative features. You're pushy. You're controlling. Okay, shut up, I said flatly. Why are you so serious all the damn time? You're like an old librarian who owns 20 cats. I haven't seen you really enjoy life. You know what you need? Harrison got up from his bed, looking at me with mischievous eyes. What? I asked slowly, stepping back when he walked closer to me. He smirked evilly before quickly grabbing my hips in his hands and tickling me. You need to laugh, Harrison yelled in between my laughter. Stop! I managed to gasp out in between laughter. My embarrassing hiccups followed each giggle. I haven't laughed like this in a long time. It felt good. I missed that laugh. Harrison chuckled as I struggled to escape his hands. W. Harrison, I screamed when he squeezed my side. That's right, Harrison joked. Scream my name. You're such a perv, I choked out, slapping his chest. When he squeezed my side once more, my leg jerked, causing an accidental kick to his nuts. His hands immediately left my side, clutching his crotch. He groaned in pain, falling to the ground. I watched shortly with wide eyes before bursting into a fit of giggles. Oh my gosh, I gasped between my laughter and hiccups. I clutched my tummy, literally crying in amusement. That's what you get, Dot. You're going to pay for that, Harrison grunted, slowly getting up. I watched with horror before running away. I squealed, locking the bathroom door before he could push it open. I have the key, you know, Harrison said through the door. This is war. You're so immature, I yelled back. His shower head was big and the removable type. An idea popped into my head before I laughed mischievously. I stepped into the tub, grabbing the shower head in my hands and getting ready for my remarkable attack. "I'm coming in," Harrison yelled. I heard the key jingling and the doorknob turning. When the door opened, I let out an Indian cry before turning the water on and spraying him. His face was priceless. His blue eyes widened and his mouth flew open in surprise. He put his arms in front of him. "I'm the immature one? You're making my whole bathroom wet," he cried. I turned the water off while giggling. He stood there with his arms crossed over his chest. He was dripping wet, his thin t-shirt clinging to his muscles. His black hair was flat against his head and tiny drops of water were dripping off his chin. I would have drooled at the sight of him, but he was ready to attack. After staring at each other for a couple of minutes, Harrison said, "You're going to regret that." I dropped the shower head in shock when he used his inhuman speed and climbed in the huge bathtub with me. Before I could grab it, he took it in his hands and turned it on. I squealed as the cold water pierced my skin. Harrison's laughter was cut short when I grabbed his delicious-smelling shampoo and squirted it at him. He let go of the shower head when the shampoo was about to drip into his eyes. "That's expensive shampoo," Harrison complained. I stuck my tongue out at him, wringing my green sweater. "You asked for it," I yelled childishly. Harrison sprayed me with the shower head once more, and I gave him a menacing glare. "You don't play fair," he whined. I laughed when he almost slipped. Before I could pick up his shampoo bottle again, he pinned me against the wall and grabbed the bottle in his hand. He squirted it on my skin. It was starting to get sticky with every second my skin was drying. He started tickling me again, and I hiccuped. "Okay, stop," I gasped. "I give up." "Truce?" Harrison's hand stopped on my hips, but he made no move to remove it. His smirk grew into my favorite genuine smile as his blue eyes pierced into mine. I tried not to blush when I realized our bodies were flushed against each other. "Although you wasted perfectly good and expensive shampoo, we should call a truce," Harrison joked. "You smell like me." "I stink," I joked too, wrinkling my nose. Harrison scoffed, but he didn't say anything. He just picked up a hand and softly pushed a wet strand of hair behind my ear. I almost closed my eyes from pleasure, but I didn't want to miss the way his blue irises were piercing into mine. In that moment, I forgot all my problems and I felt human. Harrison was the only person who could make me feel like a normal human. Although he was my mate, my wolf would leave me alone when we were in the presence of Harrison. She would be too busy bonding with Harrison's wolf. Even if it were just a couple of minutes, I basked in humanity. Sarah flashed in my head. "You!" No girl deserved to be cheated on, and I wasn't about to wreck Harrison and Sarah's relationship. I picked up my hand and trailed it down the side of his face. I didn't miss the way his head tilted closer to my hand, the way he gulped, and the way he looked at me with pain, passion, longing, and a ton of other emotions flashing in his blue eyes. Placing my hand flat on his cheek, I smiled at him. "I think I should go," I said, swallowing the tears. Stepping out of the tub, I exited his bedroom with my heart aching.